Simon Fraser University respectfully acknowledges the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kakite, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Tawasin peoples on whose unceded traditional territories our three campuses do reside on. I also have a couple links here. The first link here is from the SFU library where you can learn a bit more about land acknowledgements. There's also some learning resources there about several Indigenous communities as well as community-based initiatives. And the second link down there at the very bottom is a map-based website and app where you can learn more about the land that your home is situated on. Just some quick introductions as well. Today we have here with us Dr. Rochelle Fouladi. We also have previous honors student Cassia McIntyre, as well as Kalum Kumar, who is a current honors student. We also have our student advisor here with us, Cerise de la Cruz, and our student engagement intern, Justine Bayer. And here's our schedule for today. So we are going to get an overview of the honors program from Dr. Rochelle Fouladi. Then we will hear from Cassia and Kalum about their experience in the honors program. We will then get a quick hello from our advisor, Cerise, and she will also just familiarize the undergraduate advisor team with us. Then we will move on to the Q&A panel portion of our event, which again, you can put your questions into the chat and I will read them aloud to our panel. And we should be wrapping everything up by 5:15, so we have just over an hour. And I will hand it over to Rochelle.
Thank you so much. So I'm Rochelle Fouladi. I'm an associate professor here at the Psychology Department of Simon Fraser University. I've been a faculty member at SFU since 2003. I'm the area coordinator right now for the History, Quantitative, and Theoretical Psychology area, and also the current honors program coordinator for the 2023-2024 academic year. I will also be continuing in that role for the 2024-2025 academic year, but I will also be doing it in combination with Dr. Rebecca Cobb during that period. So we will both be co-coordinators for the honors program during that time. We really look forward to working with you, as does the psych undergraduate advising team, to help you in your decision-making regarding the honors program and your educational paths that are to come before you. So what is the honors program? Well, this is a rather wordy slide, but it captures some of the key elements of what the honors program entails. In the honors program, you conceptualize and conduct an original research project under the supervision of a psychology department faculty member, and write your honors thesis and defend your honors thesis orally. During this time, while you're working on your honors research project, you will also be developing professional, academic, and research skills. In particular, you're going to be learning about the world of academic psychology in different ways. You'll be engaging in critical discussions on the design and conduct and ethics of research in the context of your own project, but also in general. You'll be hearing the work of other members of the honors program, as well as graduate students and other faculty members in the department. You'll receive guidance on how to apply to graduate school. You'll be advancing your research and professional skills, including organizational work and study strategies, as well as oral and written communication, in particular, how to present your research in different ways to different audiences, to family members, but also in conferences, so to academic audiences as well. Your written communication we'd be working on, again, thinking about who your audience is, what kind of language you'd be using, how to structure your material. And these are really critical and transferable skills in many different ways. So the honors program itself, you actually apply to it. It entails a fall and spring sequence. During this time, you'll be working on your honors thesis project closely with your faculty supervisor. Often we refer to that faculty supervisor as your honors thesis supervisor. And then there is an honors seminar, which takes place in the fall. This is a seminar that you would have with the honors seminar instructor. Typically, that honors seminar instructor is the honors program coordinator or one of the co-coordinators, such as myself. During this honors seminar, we meet weekly, and you have a really strong cohort experience with other honors students in the honors seminar. These are all students who have successfully applied to the honors program and been accepted to the honors program. At the same time as participating in the honors seminar and working on your honors thesis project during that fall, spring, and spring sequence, you'll also be attending graduate research seminars. You don't register for these, but you are expected to attend them within your area. And you might wonder, what is your area? Well, each faculty member is associated with an area. So as an example, I'm in the history, quantitative, and theoretical psychology area. We have seminars with graduate students and faculty members every 2 weeks, and there are presentations, and you would be expected to attend these and generally also present at least once over the course of the 2 semesters. Typically, that presentation is the culmination and a practice oral presentation for your honors defense that you would be holding in April. You complete your thesis in that spring term. You submit your thesis for review to your honors thesis committee involving your supervisor as well as a secondary supervisor who you select in consultation with your primary supervisor. They provide you with feedback, and you have the final document prepared and defended orally in April during the final exam period. So the honors thesis project, let's focus on that for a little bit. It's an opportunity for you, the student, to conduct original research. Where did the ideas for this research come from? Well, some honors projects originate entirely with the students, but of course you have to get your honors supervisor to buy in to it. And so there's some co-formulation of that project that takes place. Others are closely related to ongoing faculty research programs. So sometimes you're working with a faculty member and they have some projects that they're working on, and they invite you to become involved, or you express interest in becoming involved in their honors project, and you sort of have a spin-off from that faculty research program. Where do the data come from for your research project? Well, in some contexts, students collect their own data for the project, and sometimes they use an existing data set that perhaps the faculty member has or that may be publicly available. The key elements that of your honors thesis project in which you want to be involving, and you must involve your honors thesis supervisor at every stage, is in the development of your proposal, the design of your project and writing of the proposal, obtaining ethics approval. Now, how you get ethics approval depends a little bit on the nature of the project, and also the rules around ethics approval, the policies at the university do change from time to time. But this is where you can refer to the Office of Research Ethics for guidance, as well as consultation with your honors thesis supervisor, and in many contexts also with people working in that honors thesis supervisor's lab. You then conduct the research, you'd analyze the data, you'd write up the thesis, and you have the oral defense of the thesis. So this is sort of really drilling down a lot more to what the honors thesis project entails. Now, as you might have guessed from the previous slide, you're working really closely with your honors thesis supervisor. One of the best parts of the honors experience is really working one-on-one with that faculty member and developing a strong working relationship with that faculty member over the course of your honors project. The honors project really is a lot of work, and this is not just for the student, it's also for the faculty member. Depending on the faculty member and the way they like to work and the way you like to work with them, and the way you arrange your schedules with each other, you might be meeting with your faculty member on a weekly basis. Not in person, on Zoom. Sometimes some people, they meet with their faculty members once every 2 weeks. Sometimes a lot of the correspondence is done via email as well. Lots of telephone calls. I myself am a telephone call person, so there are lots of conversations that I have with my mentees. There's lots of information about the honors program on the department website. You really are highly recommended to go and visit that honors program website for our department. There are many links there for documents, checklists for how to apply, and within one of the documents, there's good guidance on how to identify who, as a potential supervisor, might be a good fit and which lab might be a good fit. So back to the honors seminar, which takes place in the fall semester. As I mentioned, we meet regularly on a weekly basis. Some faculty members I like to meet once a week. Dr. Cobb likes to meet with students 2 times a week. Previous honors seminar instructors have met with their students once a week. So depending on who the honors seminar instructor is, you might be meeting with twice a week on a weekly basis. Of course, the difference between twice a week and once a week really is sort of how those hours for the course are, for those course meetings are broken down. My students, we meet for a 4-hour session. Dr. Cobb splits it up to two hour sessions. You might go 4 hours, that's a lot. Well, time flies. And maybe our 2 students, one of whom is a current honor student and one's a former honor student, will be able to sort of speak to their experience of the honor seminar and how that time went or didn't go for them. The activities in that honors seminar, we have weekly discussions and reflections on written professional topics, research topics, and updates. We see how students are doing as they are progressing through their project. We talk about honors project related goals and develop outlines and work on proposals. share how the proposal process is working, challenges and successes. There are lots of student presentations, and students really get good practice on presentations and how to answer questions regarding their honors project in the honors seminar. We discuss ethical and methodological issues in psychological science as pertain to your project, but also to the discipline of psychology in general. We talk about challenges to the discipline and how we might be better psych science researchers than what we see going on. How to do psychology better. We prepare for graduate school applications or other professional programs. Not everybody goes on to graduate school. Some people go on to medical school. We work on the preparation of curriculum vitas, CVs or resumes, and personal statements, which are involved in pretty much all graduate school applications. And again, if you're not interested in going specifically to graduate school, though the honors program really is designed to prepare you for graduate school, or to see if you really want to go to graduate school. Some people decide that they don't want to go to graduate school after their experience. And some people get tremendous jobs without going to graduate school. But you all, for whatever you do next, you have to have a good resume. You have to have a good application. You have to have good personal statements for whatever your future self is going to be. So we work on that in the honors seminar. So preparing for your honors, plan in advance, identify your research interests, your professional interests, make connections with faculty members, and plan your courses accordingly. So again, why honors? You participate in original research, you've got close contact with faculty members, not just your honors thesis supervisor, you get to know the honors seminar instructor quite well. You gain valuable professional and research training, you prepare for graduate or post-bachelor's study and work. You learn about a variety of critical issues in psychology, methodological issues and approaches, and you gain experience presenting research, both written and orally. Who should take the honors program? Well, if you're interested in graduate school, it's a good idea. Importantly, there are some departments of psychology where completing an honors is required, but there are many departments of psychology where completing an honors is not required to be considered for graduate school. So this is something that you need to sort of think about. If you're considering graduate school, look to where you're going to be applying. Do they require an honors or not? If they do require an honors, I would say it's a good idea for you to apply to the honors program. If they don't require an honors degree, ask yourselves, can you meet the application requirements and exceed the application requirements to graduate school in other ways without completing an honors? Are you working in people's labs? Are you having publication opportunities? Are you having research opportunities that you'll be able to write about in your graduate school application that are there, but not because you did an honors? So people can take the honors for many different reasons, and you should think carefully about why you want to complete an honors, and you can discuss your thoughts with the psychology undergraduate advisors, as well as with the counseling and career counseling office that Simon Fraser University has for students. It's critical that you meet the June 1st application deadline for the honors program, and the application form, as I mentioned, along with all sorts of other documents, are available on our department websites. On the department website, you'll see the application requirements. There are many of them. You're not going to be able to get them all down here. They're all listed in detail. So things like your credit hours, cumulative GPAs, specific courses, having taken 300, Psych 300 and 301 with a particular grade, your forms that are required, your application form along with the approval signature of your honors thesis supervisor, potential honors thesis supervisor, who would say is basically saying that they're willing to supervise your honors project. A brief description of your project, as well as relevant documents that you've completed, Tri-Council ethics training or animal care services training, depending on the nature of your project. So you apply to the honors program. Your file is reviewed for satisfaction of the requirements. If you meet the requirements, you're admitted. There are continuation requirements as well. You must maintain particular GPAs for your courses and have at least a B in completion of the Psych 301 by the end of that fall term. So you may have seen in the prerequisite was 301. Well, we have some allowances for if you haven't finished 301 in time for the application. We say, well, at least we'll consider you, we'll maybe let you in, but you need to absolutely have finished 301 by the end of fall of that fall-spring sequence. You need satisfactory attendance at that graduate research seminar that we talked about earlier, as well as continuing permission by the end of the fall semester to continue working on that honors project in the spring. So this continuing permission requirement is there to, in some sense, as a confirmation that you as an honors student have been doing good work and that you've got a good working relationship with your honors thesis supervisor and that they're willing to continue working with you in the spring term. There are completion requirements. Again, all of these are listed on the department website, and so really recommend that you review those. One thing to keep in mind is that there is a limit on the number of upper division credits which may be taken as directed studies courses. So keep an eye on that, and if you've got any questions, talk about the limits with the psychology undergraduate advisors.
Hi, everyone. My name is Therese. I see some familiar names, so you probably have seen me before. I'm here to represent the Psychology Undergraduate Advisor team. As you saw from the earlier slides from Cassia and Kalum, it can take some planning to get to the honors program, to get to where they were. Sometimes you have to plan the courses that you have to take to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of credits before applying to the honors program, making sure that you have Psych 300 and 301 prior to applying by the June 1st deadline. And that's how we can help planning for your courses. We could also chat about, think when you're considering the honors program, whether this is a good choice for you based on your career and academic goals. You can also chat with one of us. So that would be myself, Cerise. You can also chat with Emily Coe, who is my colleague, and Beth Wren is also part of our advisory team, but she's currently on leave. So hope to see you soon. Thanks.
And now I'd like to pass it over to some student perspectives. We'll be hearing from Cassia and Kalum. And first, Cassia, who's a former honors student.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rochelle, and hi, everyone. I'm Cassia, and first of all, I just wanted to say that it's really wonderful to see so many people that are interested in the honors program. So a little about me, there I am again. I completed my Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology in 2022, and I did my honors thesis with Doctors Marlene Moretti, Natalie Goulter in the Adolescent Health Lab. So for my honors thesis, I examined maltreatment as a risk factor for adolescent dating violence and engagement in risky sexual behavior. And I also focused on the role of parent-child attachment security as a potential protective factor in reducing this risk. Prior to starting the honors program, I was also involved in research in the Autism and Developmental Disabilities Lab with Dr. Grace Rochi, where I took a couple of research courses with her and worked as her lab manager. And in addition to completing my thesis with Dr. Moretti, I was also involved in other research in her lab as a senior research assistant. And now I'm a first-year master's student in the Clinical Forensic Psychology program here at SFU, working with Dr. Steve Hart, and involved in some research as a graduate student RA. So this is a quick timeline of my progression through the honors program. So I actually started conceptualizing the idea for my thesis in fall 2020, and then I applied and was accepted into the program in the summer of 2021 and continued to work on formulating the idea for my thesis throughout that semester. I officially started the program in fall 2021 with Dr. Fouladi as the honors seminar instructor, and then I defended my thesis and completed the program the following semester in spring 2022. So some of the things I'll talk about in terms of my experience and some tips I have later on, Dr. Fouladi has already touched upon, but I definitely say that my experience with the honors program certainly has, as you can see, more positives than negatives. So I was really fortunate to be able to conceptualize my thesis idea early and use archival data, meaning that I entered the program with a foundation for what my research was going to be about, and I didn't have to worry about collecting my own data. That said, archival data does come with its own challenges. For me, that meant dealing with missing data and not being able to choose the measures personally for my study. But overall, I feel like it was really beneficial for me because I was able to focus on other aspects of my thesis while others in my cohort were dealing with kind of trying to figure out how many participants they needed and things like that. Similarly, I completed all except for one course that was required for the bachelor's degree prior to starting honors, so I had the ability to focus solely on my thesis during the honors year. I also had a lot of supervisory support, and I met often with both my primary and secondary supervisors who were really involved. And this was really helpful in addition to getting to meet with Dr. Fouladi and my cohort during the honors seminar, which, as Dr. Fouladi said, we meet weekly for those. Another benefit was being exposed to each stage of the research process and gaining this experience undertaking an independent research project, as well as defending it, because I think this is something that's excellent preparation for graduate school, and one of the things that sets doing an honors thesis apart from doing a directed studies course, for example. I was also encouraged by my supervisors to pursue publication and further research dissemination of my thesis. So my work on the manuscript didn't end once the honors year was over. And we recently submitted our first round of revisions back for the reviewers to see again, and hopefully there'll be a good outcome. And I wanted to mention this just because I think this was a huge positive thing for me to gain more research experience and to see it through to hopefully the publication stage. But it also means that you can get a lot out of your honors, and it doesn't just have to be something that you're working on for the 2 semesters. And then the only other negative thing that I would have to mention in terms of my experience with the program was just how tight the timeline is. And this is something that's inevitable. Even though I felt like I had some things that really helped me to work efficiently during the 2 semesters, it definitely can feel like a time crunch at times, and it's certainly not always an easy or stress-free process. So in terms of tips, I would really recommend starting early if you can. So for example, doing a directed studies course with your supervisor prior to your honors year to get yourself situated and to give yourself some additional time to work on your research idea. Supervisor fit is also extremely important. So I think it's really key to ensure that you talk openly with your prospective supervisor to make sure that their supervision style aligns well with your needs. Honors is also, as Dr. Fouladi mentioned, a pretty significant undertaking. So it's really important to plan out your other priorities wisely and make sure that you have enough time to dedicate to doing the honors thesis. And lastly, as I just sort of touched on with the last slide, I really highly suggest aiming to make the most out of your thesis and making it count more than once. So I've listed a few different outlets here for presenting your research from your thesis as a poster or even a talk that you could give at different conferences, or if you're wanting to even submit it for publication in a journal. I think it's an opportunity that is something you can always build on beyond the two semesters that you're in the program. And if you have the chance as well, you could also use the honors year to build upon your research interests or the prospective research that you might want to focus on if you're interested in graduate school. And I'll just end off with the caveat to this, which is that all these things considered, it's important to as well be mindful about keeping your thesis manageable for both your sake and also your supervisors, because again, honors is on such a tight timeline. And that said, you also don't need to worry too much about making it perfect for your defense. A lot of the time, in my experience and what I've heard from others in the program, is that there are things that you just won't be able to get to realistically in 2 semesters, and there's always the opportunity to add to your thesis or tie up loose ends beyond your honors year. And so if anyone has questions that aren't answered during the Q&A, I'd be happy to answer them, and you can reach me by my email address there, which is just cassiam@sfu.ca. Thanks so much.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Kalum, and I am very excited to be sharing with you my experiences in the honors seminar so far. So, a little bit about myself. I'm in my 5th year of undergraduate studies, and I'm in the 2nd semester of the honors program. I'm currently situated in the social area where I'm completing my honors with Dr. Lara Acton. Broadly, my project deals with the emotional consequences of receiving advice, the emotional consequences of giving advice, the mismatches in how givers and receivers of advice appraise said advice, as well as the life transition of new students entering post-secondary education. I decided on doing my honors project fairly early into my undergraduate studies when I found myself really immersed in my courses and excelling academically. I took the next steps by volunteering in Dr. Lara Acton's Helping in Happiness Lab, where I'm still an undergraduate research assistant to this very day. I was really enthusiastic, and I found myself really enjoying the odd jobs that were asked of me, such as transcribing data, coding various pieces of data, and handing out surveys in the field. One project that I found myself really passionate about was that which I ended up taking on as my own honors project, which happened in the spring of 2022. Eventually, I had approached Lara and I had asked her, hey, can I use this as an honors project? And she enthusiastically agreed. This led me in the summer of 2023 to apply for the honors project, honor project program, which I got accepted into, and which I had just completed the first semester of in December. I can definitely speak to Rochelle's point in saying that the 4 hours did go by quite quickly, and I found it to be quite a useful experience in getting not only to know about psychology and academic psychology in general, but about your cohort as well, and all of the great research that they're doing. So these are a couple of highlights and lowlights of my honors experience so far. So, like Cassia, I had quite an early start on my honors project. I was a research assistant on my project dating back over a year before I had even began the program. This means things such as ethics, data collection, my analytic plan, and some data was even analyzed before I had even started. This had opened up new avenues for me during the first semester, such as applying to conferences, and looking at other ways to communicate my research that would not be otherwise available to me. Another highlight of my honors experience was getting to work firsthand with Dr. Acton and getting to meet a whole bunch of faculty during the social area seminars. I took advantage of listening to their talks and meeting everybody and getting a good glimpse into what academic psychology is like. Moving into more so today, what the honors experience so far is going to be looking like for myself will be preparing for the thesis defense and looking to possibly publish in the future. as well as also attending some academic conferences where I can be presenting my work via poster. Because I've had such an overwhelmingly positive experience with honors thus far, I think it's really solidified that I'd like to engage in graduate school moving forward. I was really debating whether or not this was the right path for me, but considering that honors gives you such a good insight into what graduate school may be like, I've become much more confident in that decision. Some of the lowlights of the honors experience thus far has been balancing the project, other coursework, non-academic responsibilities, and still having time for myself. It gets difficult when tasks are kind of building up, but I think it's important to show yourself some self-compassion, make sure you still have time to care for yourself at the end of the day. Finally, here are some do's and don'ts that I can summarize as well. Do connect with your honors cohort. I've had a great time getting to know everybody in my honors cohort and set up things such as weekly writing groups where you get to chat with others, brainstorm, and just overall be productive with people who are in the same unique position that you're in yourself. As has been hit on by Cassia and Rochelle, do find a supervisor that fits your style. Ways to do so may be engaging in a directed studies, research engagement, or simply volunteering in their lab. For example, Lara and I are both very structured and organized people, and that fit has made the honors program a lot more streamlined and successful. Do look to supplement your honors project with additional experiences, such as attending conferences, whether they be at SFU or abroad, networking opportunities with others in your field, as well as potentially looking to publish your research as well. Importantly, honors gives you a lot of flexibility. What I intend to do may be very different to what you can be doing. So I think it's very important to set out clear goals at the beginning of your honors program to figure out what you want to take from it. Tying into some of my road bumps, don't overwhelm yourself with an overly ambitious project and too many academic responsibilities. And finally, most importantly, don't forget to have fun and to enjoy the experience. If you have any other questions after the info session, feel free to email me at the address posted on the slide. Thank you.
First question here is about how many hours per week do you spend on your honors?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have to say, I think it's going to fluctuate at, different stages in the semester, depending on which part of the project you're working on. And it also might differ per person as well, just depending on how extensive the project is and things like that. For me, I did spend quite a lot of time on it. But again, it would fluctuate. So it wasn't like I was spending 12 hours, every couple of days working on it. There were definitely there were lighter weeks and then heavier weeks. But again, it's a bit of a general answer, I guess, but because it kind of depends and differs per person, I would say that if you're trying to plan out sort of how long it should take, try to prioritize the honors project. In my experience, that was sort of how I tried to manage my time, is putting that as a top priority.
That's a great question, and I have a very similar answer in that it depends. There were some weeks where I don't think I worked on my honors project at all, and other weeks where it was the top priority for me. It was just depending on what I was doing at the moment, the stage in which my project was at, whether or not I had collected any data or not, as well as just what part of the term we were in as well, and what other courses I had going on at the time.
Thank you for sharing. Just reading through the chat here, I have another question. How competitive is the honors program? I wonder how many people you have that are interested. How many students can you accept, let's say?
I'll start with that. The way we admit the students to the honors program has changed a little bit over the years. Right now, it's as long as you meet the requirements and you've got a supervisor who's willing to support you. We are not turning honors applicants away. Our group is typically ranging between 12 to 17 people in a given year. That may change over time. So that's how I would answer that question.
So regarding the question about how competitive the honors program is, I don't have anything else to add other than usually it's competitive in a way that you would have to complete the requirements. And so once you have the requirements completed, we then would submit that to the honors committee. And then as Rochelle mentioned, if you have the requirements, then usually you would get approved.
The next question, could we possibly reiterate how students can connect and also decide who their honors supervisor will be?
I'll start on that one. Literally, the best approach is to have been volunteering in faculty members' labs, to have taken courses with people and do directed studies, and to develop a relationship, a working intellectual relationship with your supervisor, your potential supervisor. It is based on this that when you express your interest in working with them, they have a background knowledge, they have working relationship with you, they know how you perform academically as well, they know your writing in general as well, and so they can indicate to you whether or not they have, you know, the capacity to take on another student as an honors student during that year. So that is really the way to approach things. So this is where the advice of start early on getting research experience. You may not know if that you want to do an honors or not, but start figuring out whether research is going to be a good fit for you early on.
Yeah, I would echo what Rochelle is saying, and I would only add just from my personal experience, I believe I was involved with my supervisor's lab and research for about 2 or 3 semesters prior to bringing up the idea of honors. And then I think as well, just making sure with your timeline that that's enough time to consider what your project could be. So obviously don't go asking so close to the application deadline, but also try and plan a little bit in advance. And it can be helpful to come with some ideas if you're meeting with a supervisor, you know, how your research interests might overlap, possible ideas you could discuss with them. But I would just, echo Rochelle that it's best to start early and just try and establish that relationship first.
Building on those 2 points, one thing I'd add is show your enthusiasm, show that you care, show that you enjoy spending time and working with the professor, and I think that could lead to success.
The next question I have here, are SFU student athletes able to apply to the program or complete an honors degree, given that they are often away for tournaments and whatnot? But this could also possibly apply to other students who have, you know, certain life commitments that take them out of campus a lot.
This actually has to do with whether or not you have time as a student athlete or somebody with other commitments, familial or otherwise, to dedicate to the honors program. So that's something that you have to sort of work out with, particularly with your potential honors supervisor. Is that going to work for you? Is that going to work for them? If that is something that you both agree on, then we sort of have to figure it out a little bit for the honors seminar, because we do want you attending on a weekly basis. Participation is critical. So commitments that conflict with attending regularly, it is a challenge, right? So, but if you and your honors supervisor think that this is something that you can manage, then by all means, I would say go for it.
Yes, I agree. This actually came up in some of my advising appointments, because we do have student athletes who are interested in this program. Like Rochelle mentioned, and the other previous honor students and current honor students have mentioned, this can be kind of a big time commitment, and if you have other time commitments, so it would be a question about which one do you prioritize, and also can it be worked around with your honor supervisor. So I would encourage you to think about how your attendance into your seminar courses would be impacted. Like Rochelle mentioned, it would be challenging if you miss a lot. It's kind of like, with other commitments, right? If you're unable to go into the classes consistently, it's kind of like missing other classes as well. It's going to be challenging. But that said, we do have some like previous honor students who were student athletes and they were able to succeed in the program. So that's probably going to be something to think about when you're looking for supervisors as well, if that's something that you can work around.
Yes, and I was going to say, following up on Cerise, I do have experience working with student athletes, and yes, their athlete schedule commitment schedule was a challenge, but certainly they completed their honors program with tremendous success.
The question that I'm reading here says, it's about course load and the honors program. Would you recommend taking a course alongside the fall semester of the honors program, or do you only recommend enrolling in honors for the fall semester due to time commitments? So I think the question is wondering how many other courses you could recommend taking alongside doing your project.
Last semester, I had taken 2 additional courses alongside PSYC 490, and I found that to be I found it to be manageable. At times, it did get a little bit overwhelming, but because I had done a lot of heavy lifting prior to, it gave me a lot of leeway in order to take an extra course. I think 2 courses in my case was fine. However, your mileage may vary depending on what you need to do and what you've done so far.
Yeah, similar to Kalum, I didn't have a heavy course load during my honors year. I took the one elective course I needed in the spring semester, and I'm not sure if it would have been better or worse to have taken it in the fall just because it was the one course. So for me personally, it felt all pretty manageable. I do know other students who have taken a heavier course load and they fared just fine, but you'll just have to consider, I guess, your individual situation.
I think it really depends on the individual student. So some students may be okay with it, but we've had some previous honors info sessions where they said, no, it's not recommended. So I think it would depend on the course load of the whatever other course that you're going to be taking. And if you're unsure, you can always chat with one of us in the psychology advising team, and we can discuss and see if that's going to be a good idea or not. But yes, I think it would depend on you as a student, and it also would depend on your workload for your project.
And I'll just add, I have had students and worked with students closely who've had full course loads, and it's been very, very stressful. But again, they have completed their honors program with tremendous success. So it will be challenging, but it can be done. Maybe not recommended, but it can be done.
Great, thank you. I have an interesting question here. It says, in finding a supervisor, generally, how much do you have to compromise with the supervisor in terms of research interests?
It is a good idea to be flexible, is what I can recommend, right? Because ultimately your supervisor needs to be able to work with you in a way that, and on material that they are knowledgeable in and have interest in. They aren't going to be a good fit if you're asking them to do something and supervise something that they are not knowledgeable in. You're also going to need a secondary supervisor who also has some knowledge base in those areas. So my recommendation is to be flexible.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. With myself, I had taken on Lara's project that was already ongoing, but I had made some small adjustments and I had expressed areas of my own interest, and those became points that we emphasized later on when we were in the middle of planning everything out. So it was very much kind of a give and take situation, but I definitely underscored the ability to stay flexible and emphasize those points of shared interests to make your experience as kind of streamlined and as successful as possible.
Yeah, I agree. And I would probably just add, in addition to being flexible and having similar research interests, don't be afraid still to bring up, new ideas or unique ideas if they're of interest to your supervisor. You never know how it'll go. And so I think there's always room for collaborating on different ideas that maybe aren't super aligned with their program, but it's always worth a shot, I think, to bring it up and have those discussions.
And typically what you'll have done is you'll have worked these kinds of things out in advance of your application to the honors program, right? You'll be determining with that faculty member whether you think you can work together on something.
I see a few questions, a couple about doing the honors and then applying to different grad programs like counseling psychology or like medical school. Can you maybe speak on doing a psych honors with having the intention of doing graduate studies in a different discipline? Is that still beneficial? Rochelle, if you want to kick that
Sure,
off.
I'll start there. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, you can take your honors degree. Actually, you can take your bachelor's degree without an honors and apply to all sorts of different areas. That's you can go into counseling psychology, you can go into clinical psychology, you can go to med school, you can go to occupational therapy, you can go to physiotherapy. I have mentored students who have done a variety of work. And that's really one of the critical things, is to not just think of psychology as, as requiring you to go to counseling or to clinical. There are many, many other paths that you can follow.
Add to that, for counseling psychology and other grad programs, it's important that you look at the individual requirements for each school because they do differ. So some of them might require an honors program, some of them might actually not require it. But yeah, pay attention to individual requirements if you're applying for grad school, because they do differ based on each school and based on each program as well. Yeah. An honors will looks great because that usually means that they know that you're keeping a good GPA, and that you have experience in research, and that's usually pretty handy if you're going to graduate school.
But again, I really want to critically emphasize there are many programs where you do not require an honors to get into graduate school. So really pay very careful attention to that. If you have a strong GPA, if you have strong research experience through volunteering in different labs, for clinical psychology, in counseling psychology, you typically need a lot of community level volunteer work. And so that is very, very important to consider.
Kind of on the topic of, honors isn't always a requirement. A question here says, does having honors replace not having a competitive GPA? Although if you have honors, you likely still have a very strong GPA when it comes to getting accepted into grad school.
With clinical psychology programs, they're extremely competitive. And so you really do need an extremely strong GPA. So an honors is not going to typically replace a low GPA. But that being said, again, you've gotten into honors because you have a reasonable GPA. But even having a reasonable GPA is not necessarily high enough in order to get into a clinical program. You can look at the requirements for clinical programs. Generally on the departments, they will report the GPAs for their incoming class over in previous years. And so that's something that you can review to sort of see where your GPA stands relative to previous year's successes to clinical programs. In programs that are not clinical, they're general programs, maybe IO psychology, social psychology. The applications aren't as competitive in the sense of, say, GPAs. We look very, very strongly for excellent GPAs, but we're typically there looking for excellent fit between the student and the interests of the graduate school supervisor. So I will look at somebody who has a lower GPA if I look at their application and think that they have excellent fit.
Yeah, usually also for honors and GPA, sometimes they can kind of like be in different categories. So it's like even though you are in the honors too, they will also take a look at your individual GPA. So it does not replace having a competitive GPA. And like has been mentioned, you don't need to have an honors for some of the graduate programs, but you do need to pay attention to your competitive GPA. And the minimum competitive GPA on each website also is the minimum. So you also want to make sure that you keep it as high as possible if you're applying, because that's usually the cutoff, but you'll also be competing with different students with really competitive GPAs.
I have a question here that I think is a really good question. It says, in some graduate programs, I've seen honors or equivalent as an application requirement. What would be considered equivalent to the honors program? And what advice do you have for all students to be successful in the honors program? That end part is kind of a second question, but maybe we can touch to start with on that first part of it there.
Equivalent would be considered research experience. Volunteering in labs, if you can show evidence of working on manuscripts, of conference presentations, if you can show evidence that you've had there's some original ideas in your research. What's going to be really important there is your construction of your curriculum vitae, which you'll be including in your application, as well as your personal statement or your research statements that you would be including in your applications.
I think the only thing I would add is also what kind of graduate program it would be. Like I previously mentioned, the requirements might be different. So you can always check in with the individual department as to what they would consider as equivalent. So if it's usually if they're looking for honors, it will be research. So like Rochelle mentioned, it will be research experience. But you can also double check if there's any work experience that could be considered, but typically for honors, usually it's like the research experience that Rochelle has mentioned.
This next question, and I know from our chat today, Cassia and Kalum, it sounds like the both of you started your honors, kind of later in your undergraduate year. You had a good amount of courses underneath your belt. But what year do students typically start the honors program?
So when you applied for the graduate, so not the graduate, for the honors program, it would be, you would need to have a 75 units or more. So usually we see people closer to third year, fourth year, or even fifth year, but that's usually closer to the end of their degree where they do the honors. So it will be after accumulating that number of units and closer to fourth year or end of third year.
And this was the second half of the previous question, which I think would be helpful for everyone. What is just some general advice from all of you about how to be successful in the honors program?
So I think, just to reiterate, I think some of the points that Kalum and Rochelle brought up as well, start early. I think that was super beneficial in my case, and it seems like for a lot of students, that's really important given how tight, again, the timeline of honors is. And in addition to start early, make it a priority. Another thing we talked about, it's a really big undertaking, so definitely putting it at the top of your list and dedicating as much time as you can to it will definitely help. And then people come into the honors program with different levels of experience, but it's always helpful and can sometimes make the learning process a little bit easier on you if you've been working on some research, whether it be for your thesis or otherwise, prior to starting the honors year. So having a little bit of RA experience in labs, or even doing, like I mentioned, the directed studies before, that can always help you and not make things so daunting going into the fall term when you start honors.
I think one thing that I didn't touch upon in my slides, but one thing that I found helped out a lot is if you have the opportunity to do so, is to take some of the higher level statistics courses that are offered in the psych department. For example, I had taken Psych 410, 910 prior to my honors project, and I found that helped out a lot. Statistics can be daunting for a lot of people, but I kind of challenged myself and I had taken that course prior to, and it made a lot of the statistics that I was doing with my honors project a lot easier, and I found myself going a little bit more in depth in that area in my proposal.
I think Kalum really hit on a lot of the key points, as did Cassia, but really be kind to yourselves, but plan ahead. It's a lot of hard work, but I love the point that Kalum just brought up, is if you can take methodology statistics courses or qualitative analysis courses in other departments in advance of starting the honors program, all the better. I was extremely excited this year in the current cohort of Psychology 411 to have a good number of students in that class who are planning on applying to honors next year. I've never seen this number of students in my class, and it really, in advance of honors or even during honors, sometimes I'm like, how are you planning this project without actually having taken the courses? So really do the coursework in advance, or at least during, and that'll be tremendous. So take your 301 well in advance, then take 410, take 411, expand your methodological palette, as you know, painter's palette, as much as possible, and then you can use those different paints in different ways in the planning and the design and the analysis of your honors project. So think as painters might do.
Thank you, Rochelle, and thank you everyone who participated on our panel today. Rochelle, Kalum, Cerise, and Cassia, really great hearing from you all, and thank you for sharing your insights and kind of demystifying the whole honors process. From the chats and from these questions too, there are, some questions about grad school, and on our website, we do have events from the past that we recorded, our grad school 101 event, which we will be hosting in the coming months, which we should be hosting again in the coming months, but it's good to go back, watch those videos. Justine, maybe if you're able, you can go and just drop that link quickly in the chat before we close things out, but there's great resources here. There's great resources on our website. Yeah, and if you have any questions, the psychology advisors are here to answer all your inquiries. And that is it for our session today. Thank you everyone for your participation.